You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name, and politics is our game. And we will be doing politics this evening because we have as our guest Tim Stratton, who's running for state rep. He is running in the 58th district. He's running against the Democratic incumbent, Karen May, who's been there how many years now?
She's been there 8 years.
8 years. 8 years. Okay, and so she's an 8-year incumbent. People would think Tim has his work cut out for him. Many people characterize the district as a Democratic district. We'll hear about it. He may differ from that. Very briefly, the district. Well, look, it's on the North Shore, but if you're watching the show and you're in the city of Chicago and you say, oh, it doesn't concern me, forget that, because we're talking about statewide issues. And you folks got a state rep and you have a state senator, and many of the same issues we'll be talking about today facing you, whether you're in Chicago, whether you're in the western suburbs, whether you're downstate in Cairo, Illinois. Really, it's across the state. And we air sometimes on the Illinois channel, so we do air across the state of Illinois from time to time. So don't turn that dial. But if you want to know, if you happen to live in 58th, if you're in there, it's the North Shore. North Shore is about 20 miles or so north of the Loop for people who aren't from Chicago. Glencoe, Highland Park, all or most of these areas are in the 58th. Glencoe, Highland Park, Highwood, Deerfield, Northbrook. Northbrook, I guess, would be just a portion of that district, but Bannockburn, Riverwoods, Lake Forest, Lake Bluff, also all or most. So of all those areas I mentioned, it's all or most in the 58th.
That's correct.
Some are Republicans, some are Democratic, some are independent.
Fairly large and diverse district.
All right, and so people think of Lake Forest and Lake Bluff as mainly Republican, but that district has gone differently from time to time. And then they say Highland Park and Glencoe, where you live, is mainly Democratic. Does that stereotype hold?
I think to some degree it does. However, I think if you really understand the district and you really get in and look at things, you'll come to find that we actually have a very independent-minded district. A lot of moderate voters, a lot of voters who aren't afraid to vote the other ticket, whether they be Republican or Democrat. I think we're blessed at having a district that understands the issues, that gets involved.
Well, understand the issues. Let me just cut you off. One big issue is the budget. People are hearing a lot about the fighting going on in Springfield between the Speaker of the House, Mike Madigan, and the Governor, Blagojevich. They can't even get in the same room. The Speaker won't go to meetings, basically, with the other legislative leaders. And so there's that battle going on. Their budget was produced, but it was sent to the Governor. He just recently vetoed it, or at least reduced portions of the spending to lower amounts because he said it was an unbalanced budget, so he made it unbalanced. It's now going back to the legislature. We'll see if they will seek to override those reductions in spending. But people say it's about a $2 billion deficit. Is that the problem, or is the problem that Speaker Mike Madigan and Governor Blagojevich basically hate each other? I mean, people have said they don't like that phrase. They said there's extreme dislike, but I think most people would say these two guys hate each other. And is that how it appears to you?
I think that's how it appears, unfortunately. And I'm not sure if it stops just there.
What do you mean? Where else does it go?
You know, I think the Senate President, Emil Jones, you've got to throw him into the mix too, because that's part of the government machine.
He is allied generally with the governor.
Allied generally with the governor.
He's a Democrat, for people who don't follow this. He's the Senate President. Emil Jones, Democrat, Senate President. Governor Blagojevich, Democrat, in his sixth year now. Speaker Mike Madigan, he's the Speaker of the Illinois House for like decades, probably 3 almost. He, of course, is a Democrat.
So 2 years back in the early 1990s, I believe.
When he took a coffee break, basically.
Exactly, the coffee break.
The Republicans got it for 2 years, and then they screwed it up. More perhaps about that later. As the joke says, the Republicans never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. Agreed?
It certainly seems that way in some years past.
Okay. So with these 3 Democrats, what's the problem? Putting the Republicans aside, is it just that there is no Democratic leadership here?
I think it's a failure of leadership. I think it's a personality issue. You know, one would think with one party controlling state government that we'd actually be able to solve some problems, but that doesn't seem to be the case, and it's because the dialogue's missing. There does not appear to be dialogue, an honest dialogue and debate on the issues that you need for representative government to work effectively and efficiently.
We'll cut right to the chase. Is it a revenue problem for the state of Illinois? Is it a spending problem, or is it both? What do you say?
I think it's a spending problem. I think it's a spending
problem. Too much
problem.
is being spent?
Too much is being spent.
You would cut spending?
I would cut spending.
Where would you cut spending?
I would cut spending across the board, but I would be very mindful. Education, medical type expenditures are positive things, and we need to be very careful that we don't hurt people and have unintended consequences.
Well, are you saying those don't get cut when you do an across-the-board cut?
No, I think they get cut.
They get cut
well.
too.
They get cut as well. But listen, we have other ways, as opposed to just cutting spending. I am a big fan of public-private partnerships and of getting innovative solutions to our financial problems. You know, for instance, we have a situation now in Illinois where we are basically outspending our revenue sources, and we've not had a truly balanced budget, and we don't have a balanced budget, of course. And so we have the governor, with the General Assembly's blessing in many cases, engaging in fund sweeps, not paying pension obligations. We have unfunded pension
Before you get that, what are those
Sure.
fund sweeps? What does that mean?
Fund sweeps are where we're taking monies which are set aside statutorily into specific funds, and the governor is asking for permission, if you will, to take that money and divert it into the general fund to
How would you vote if you were there? Would you vote for those fund sweeps?
No, I would not. I would not vote
Okay.
for
So
fund
that's
sweeps.
$400 or $500 million that he wants that he wouldn't have. So
Correct.
you've knocked that out.
Correct.
Pension obligation bonds, you're getting into the pension area. You
Sure.
were saying that they're
Sure.
underfunded. What he wants to do is, you know, the governor has a plan. He did this once before, and some say it worked. You sell bonds, issue bonds, state issues bonds at about 5%. They did last time. They think they can earn about 8 or 8.5% investing it. They book the gain right then, and voila, there's money to help with the deficit.
Sure.
That worked. Would you say that worked when it was tried? I would say in 2003, 2004.
I think that it had the potential to work better than it did, and
Did it work? Would you say at the end of the day he had made money for the state of Illinois? That
think-
so-called pension bond sale.
I think that, yes, that there was some money made at the end of the
Okay.
day. The problem is that we didn't spend it in the right places. The problem is
Okay.
that it was
But
that the
now,
earnings were
right now,
squandered.
he wants. That was a $10 billion
Correct.
little. What some would call bond scheme. Some would say pension obligation sale. Now, pension obligation bonds, I guess. Now he wants to do the similar thing for is it 16 billion?
About 16 billion.
Right.
About
Okay.
16
So he has to do more, and now the potential gain will be only about 500 million.
Correct.
Last time they thought it would be 2 billion.
Correct.
So it's getting harder to keep squeezing at this tree. Right?
Absolutely, and there is a limit because we do have rating agencies that monitor our bonds. We have, I believe, we're the 6th most indebted nation or state in the nation when it comes to bonded indebtedness.
So this is something you follow professionally because you got a law degree from Thomas M. Cooley Law School.
Correct.
You practice in the area of government finance, local finance, state and local finance, public finance, right?
Absolutely. I work with local governments on debt issuances and budgeting issues.
Right now you work with Ice Miller, that's Indiana, well, its main office was, and I guess is in Indianapolis, but they have a Chicago office,
We
they
have a
have a
Chicago
DuPage
office and a DuPage office.
You work in the Chicago office?
I work in the Chicago office, and my practice is primarily working with park districts, forest preserve districts, and municipalities.
Park districts you know something about because you're currently an elected commissioner
Yes,
in Glencoe and the
commissioner
Parks
on
Board.
Treasurer of the Glencoe Park District.
You've been on a zoning board before?
Been on the Glencoe zoning board.
And then previously you were elected as a community college trustee, is that right?
Correct.
So
correct.
you've been immersed in this area, you know something
Correct.
about it.
Correct. Understand government finance, and I know that we have to live within our means. And getting there and solving these problems, look, it's not easy. We need an environment, a culture in Springfield where folks can actually sit down, people who understand the fiscal situation that we're in the state of Illinois, and can sit down.
So you think you understand this?
I think I understand it.
Yeah,
Correct.
what about Karen May? She's your opponent. You think she understands it?
Not enough.
Well, what do you mean by not enough?
Well, I think if you look at Karen's record during her time in the General Assembly, you'll find that she's been very dedicated to environmental issues, and she's been very singularly, I would say, focused on environmental issues.
Do you agree with her on environmental issues?
I agree with many of her points on the environment. I agree that we need to protect the environment.
You would be focused as well on environment.
I would be focused on environment.
So what's the difference?
Well, the difference is that there's a lack of focus on her part, in my opinion, on the fiscal issues of the state. Look, it's like healthcare. If you have a sick child and you're a parent, I'm a parent. I have a daughter that's 2 years old. If my daughter has a health problem, I want to go to a specialist. I want specialists dealing with the problem. The state of Illinois has a financial problem. We have a fiscal problem in this state. We need individuals in state government that understand finances and fiscal health and fiscal responsibility to address these problems.
You don't think Karen May understands that stuff? She's been there 8 years, right?
Correct.
You don't think she understands that?
I don't think that she does enough to advance fiscal responsibility in the State House. And if you look at some of the legislation...
Can one state rep do much? Because everybody says it used to be run by the four tops.
Sure.
2 Republicans,
Sure.
2 Democrats, and the governor, 4 tops and the governor. But now it's all Democrats.
Correct.
And so people say, and the Republicans have such small numbers, they don't really, they're really not necessary. They are now for some things because it's after the end of May.
Sure.
So if we go back for a new budget or something.
Sure.
At that point, what kicks in, instead of needing a majority after the end of May for budget matters, you need 60%, right?
60%, correct.
But in general, so whether it's the 4 tops, including Republicans or not, and the governor, it usually doesn't get down to the sort of rank and file. People are just state
Sure.
rep. I mean, am I right on that?
I think generally you're right, but part of being a leader, part of being involved in fixing these problems is to insert yourself into a situation.
So you think you can
lobby
do
for
that
committee
as a
appointments.
freshman? If you got elected, freshman state rep, you think you'd say, "Here I am, and I'm going to be a big guy. I'm going to affect policy"?
Sure. I mean, I'm going to try. I'm going to do my best to represent the interest of the district, and that means doing everything I can to help the state of Illinois address the
You
structural
talked to Tom
deficit.
Cross about it? He's the Republican leader in the State House.
I have.
He'd
I've
welcome
had
you
many
and say, "Come on
conversations.
in, get you elected, and you'll be my right-hand guy."
Tom has been very open and has provided a lot of support to the campaign, and I think
Talked to
Tom
Frank
does a great
Watson.
job.
He's the Senate Republican
Yes,
leader.
I've had
He'd
conversations
welcome you
with
coming
Frank.
in and being a force.
Sure, it's all of these things. I think that we're at a point now where we need leadership in Springfield on these issues and folks who understand finance. And I think that yes, I think that both Watson and Cross would welcome the type of expertise that I would bring to the table.
Well, we should say we've invited State Representative Karen May in. Years ago, when she first came in, before she came in, we weren't able to connect to get her on the show. Haven't tried recently very recently, until this weekend, and I got to say, had an opening for the show, for the taping of the show come up, and we contacted Tim Stratton on Friday, late Friday, and you were able to get back and say you could do it. We tried the same with Representative May to see if she wanted to join us, see if she could commit to be on her separately, and so we haven't heard back. Tried several phone calls, but it's been a short amount of time, so we look forward to hearing back from her, look forward to having her on the show, separately, jointly. You'd like to be on with Karen May?
Absolutely, I would welcome the opportunity.
You're looking for town meetings with Karen May?
Yes, I am.
How many do you want?
I want a town meeting in each town within our district, at least each one of the large towns.
So how many is that?
So I'm talking about 5.
Five town meetings?
About 5 town meetings.
Sounds
in the district.
reasonable.
Yes, I've proposed.
What she said? She said she's happy to do it?
No, she unfortunately is not.
She doesn't want to do it? Seriously?
She doesn't want to do it. She doesn't want to do it.
What did she say? You talked with her personally about that?
I did. We've had some personal conversations.
What did she say? You said 5 town meetings, and Karen May said what?
She said that there are, and this was reported by the Pioneer Press, that there was a town hall, or a debate rather, scheduled by the League of Women Voters each election cycle, and that was the debate that she would be participating
And that would be it, one debate.
To this date.
It hardly seems fair. Look, this is democracy. We don't endorse candidates. We don't endorse Tim. We don't endorse Karen. Everybody knows we don't endorse Democrats, we don't endorse Republicans, but we do endorse the notion that everybody should do what Tim Stratton is doing. Come here, answer questions, some kind of tough, some just in general. Everybody should do that, whether they're a challenger, whether they're an incumbent. But more than that, not just being on this show, they have elected legislators and their challengers should be in town meetings. Lauren Beth Gash and Mark Kirk set the example in 2000 when it was an open seat in the 10th Congressional District. They agreed, and they appeared with each other at something like, I think, 33 forums when they were running against each other. Well, it's the 10th Congressional District is a little larger than the 58th District, so...
Just a little.
So instead of 33, it seems like 5 is a reasonable number. It's about a sixth the size.
Sure.
Congressional District, 600,000 or 700,000. House District, about 100,000
About
plus,
100,000.
right? Do the quick math, 5 forums. So Karen May, why don't you do those town meetings? Let me know when you're going to be on public affairs. We'll treat you as fairly. We'll give you, as we're treating Tim, we'll give you a chance to respond to these things that he's saying, accusations, allegations. So enough for that, but we're here. We're doing a public service. We want candidates of all stripes to be on the show, Democrats and Republicans, liberal and conservative. And we promise you, our motto is tough but fair. All right, so enough for Karen May. We'll come back to that. But
sure.
But as we get to the issues here, if you were there, right now, what would you do? Is there about $1.5 billion deficit? You said you would have an across-the-board cut. You would favor that. Would you? How large does that cut have to be? And is that the main way, or perhaps the only way in which you remove that deficit?
Well, to answer your question, no. I think that the problems, unfortunately, that we're facing in the state are so large that it's going to take a combination of tools, if you will, to fix the situation. The first order of business, in my opinion, is to get a handle on what's going on in terms of the pension liabilities. There was a recent report that was in the Bond Buyer newspaper, which is a financial publication that the bond folks and investment community follows. And the Bond Buyer publication cited Illinois as having, at current date, approximately $42 billion worth of unfunded pension liabilities. We have 5 pension systems, state-operated pension systems across our system, and all of those together have approximately $42 billion worth of unfunded liability.
Okay, we've had that for a long time.
Correct.
I mean, people have talked about it, they may not know the exact amount. Blagojevich claims he's reduced it. Republicans disagree. But the thing is, it's an enormous unfunded liability, number one. Number two, a lot of those pensions are way out of line. You know that, I know that, and everybody watching this. Superintendent of New Trier High School left a few years ago with a lifetime pension, annual pension of $232,000 per year. You folks are paying for it, watching it across the state of Illinois. That's a lot of dough to be worried about whether his pension is going to be paid, right?
Absolutely.
So maybe, I know people say constitutionally we have to do this, but unless the courts are going to require and compel the state legislature and say you must support this, maybe the day has come to think about maybe those commitments should not all be met. Because I just gave you one example. There are lots of them like that. Maybe there's some that are more reasonable, but still, you know, how many people these days have those kinds of pensions? You become a state rep. If you become a state rep, after 8 years, you get a pension. That's it, it vests. How many companies do you know, private companies, do you work out there? So look around, some of your former state reps, they're going to be on the dole from you, okay?
That's a fair statement.
And, you know, so some people say we ought to we go more toward a defined contribution system for state pensions as opposed to defined benefit. At least make that change. Would you favor that reform?
I would favor that reform. It would have to be something that we would obviously have to study. I think in terms of our pension obligations that are already owing folks, I do believe that a promise made should be a promise kept, and we should honor those existing
Even
pensions.
if you have to raise taxes onerously on your constituents to do that?
Well, I don't think...
It's got to come from somewhere.
Sure, absolutely.
You can't just find the money in the ground, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm not convinced that, if we set up the rest of the budget correctly, that we'll have to necessarily raise taxes to cover that.
Necessarily. Are there any conditions under which you would favor an increase in the income tax or the sales tax if you were elected?
I've signed the no tax pledge.
Okay. Which means you won't do it.
Which means I won't do a tax increase unless there's an offsetting revenue cut.
All right. Well, but you will agree to no net increase in an offsetting expenditure cut. Is that what you're saying? Then you could have an increase in taxes.
Then I could.
If you had an offsetting
expenditure. If we offset expenditures.
Well, I don't even get that. I mean, I thought it was that you wouldn't agree. I thought the tax pledge says no net increase in taxes.
No net increase. It does allow for the imposition of a new fee or a new tax if there's an offsetting.
Because allow you to cut taxes somewhere else.
If you cut taxes somewhere else.
No net increase in taxes.
No net increase in
taxes.
And
for instance, people are saying the Democrats, and in particular Speaker Mike Madigan, is planning to handle the deficit in January of 2009. He expects to elect more Democrats. Right now, the margin is 67 to 51 in the House. He would like it to be veto-proof.
Correct.
Then he suspected the Speaker would favor an increase in income taxes, perhaps get the Senate to go along with that. The governor says he opposes that, but he couldn't. His veto would be overridden.
Correct.
Do you think that's the scenario? Are the Democrats plotting to raise taxes in 2009?
Look,
raise income taxes?
Sure. I think if you look at what history has shown us, that is a distinct possibility. And I think that there's a reason why the Chicago Sun-Times came out just last week saying that we need to elect more Republicans to state government.
The Sun-Times said that.
The Sun-Times
You
said
expect
that.
to get them to endorse you over your opponent?
I will work to get their endorsement.
We'll see what they have to say about it. Okay, so you wouldn't go along with that income tax increase
No,
under
I
any
would not.
cases?
No.
You would look to cut spending?
I would look to cut spending.
But on education, you say you got to be careful and you want to avoid significant cuts.
Sure.
But you might cut the rate of growth in spending for education?
Might cut the rate of growth in spending. We might have to do that.
Although mostly the local education, K through 12, in your area, well, the great percentage of it comes from local property taxes.
Correct.
So it's really, in large part, not affected what you do in the state.
Correct.
True?
Correct. The local. Now there is legislation which is pending, which would, and this has been floated around for some time, which would swap local property taxes with the corresponding
which
income
would raise
tax.
the income tax from 3% to either 4 or 5%.
5%, I think, was a number
which
that
some
I
people
heard.
characterize as a 66% increase, 2% over 3%, 66%, and lower property taxes somewhat, but there would be a net total increase in revenue by House Bill 750 or other similar plans of $6 to $7 billion additional tax dollars.
Sure.
You oppose that?
I oppose that.
Your opponent, Karen May, her position?
I'm not sure what her position is. When she was asked by the Pioneer Press about her position on that, her response was that we would have to wait and see what leadership came up with to see and make sure that it wouldn't hurt our school districts.
So she might be for that?
She may be. I'm not sure.
We don't know. Karen, if you're out there, come on Public Affairs and we'll get your position straight right from you.
Sure.
You can handle this.
And I oppose that, by the way, partially on the basis of local control of school districts. I think that our residents that I've spoken with in the 58th District understand that we have some of the best school districts in the state, if not the nation. They're willing to pay for that quality education, and they oppose the notion of putting Springfield in charge of our school finances, which in essence this bill would do, because the monies would be collected.
You don't
and
want to put
dispersed by the
Springfield
state.
in charge.
I don't
want Glencoe to be in charge of Glencoe, New Trier in charge of New Trier.
Exactly. Lake Forest in charge of Lake Forest schools, Deerfield in charge of the Deerfield schools, Northbrook
local
in charge
control.
of
You believe in local
exactly.
control?
I do.
Karen May, you're not so sure?
Not so sure.
Well, again, ask Karen May when she's here if she comes on and she can speak for herself. Reforms. You'd like to see some reform in education?
I would.
So in Chicago, were there perhaps more unperforming schools that perform well than on the North Shore? 400,000 students or so, many say half are in failing schools. They're spending $14,000 per kid per year, a pretty hefty amount, not as much perhaps on the North Shore, but decent expenditure. Should there be more charter schools available, more options in the city of Chicago?
I generally believe we should have more options, more charter schools.
More choice?
More choice.
More competition?
More competition. I think that we have to make sure that the organizations that are running the charter schools are properly certified, accredited, and the children are getting...
Mostly the people are on waiting lists for these charter schools. Don't you think they can make their decisions as to whether these schools are accountable and good?
Absolutely.
Because if they don't like the charter schools, they can always go back to the private school, right?
Exactly, exactly. And I think
so wouldn't we rely on them for whether it's doing a good job?
I believe, in large part, I believe in the market, and certainly...
You believe in individuals making choices for themselves?
Absolutely.
Is this the Republican message? Let's just get distracted for a second.
Sure.
What is the Republican message coming out from Tom Cross, from Frank Watson, and from you and others running for the State House and State Senate?
Sure.
What's the state GOP message?
I think the state GOP message is that, look, we've got to have more personal responsibility, personal decision-making, first and foremost. I think that's an excellent point. I think the other economic message that we're getting out is that, look, we know Illinois is broken. We know that people expect more out of their state government, and we have to be prepared to give it to them. And that means encouraging job growth and investment in Illinois, not treating business as the enemy and driving jobs out of the state.
What do you do to encourage job growth?
Well, I think we make for a more favorable environment.
And how do you make it?
How specifically? Specifically, what we need to do is get our tax and fee situation under control. You know, my opponents supported some of the largest tax and fee increases in the state's history with the various Blagojevich budgets, which have been enacted
That impairs business development, that's your point?
Absolutely.
Economic development,
Absolutely.
growth by businesses, less growth, fewer jobs.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Keep taxes low, attract more companies, more jobs.
Correct.
That's the message from coming out.
You know, another thing that folks can read about on my website is...
What's your website?
It's www.timforillinois.com, and that's all spelled out. Tim,
and you got a blog as well?
I do. I've got a blog. It's changeillinois.blogspot.com.
All right.
And we've got a lot of important state issues and material.
Capital plan. People are talking about a $34 billion capital plan, and the governor seems to suggest, as do others, that they could finance it by a gaming bill, expand gaming, perhaps have a Chicago casino. If that were the case, would you support a capital plan and have it financed by gaming, expanded gaming?
No, I would not.
You would not. So you differ with Tom Cross. He seems he's your leader, and he seems to support it. You say, Tom, you respectfully disagree.
I do.
Do you want a capital plan?
I absolutely want a
capital plan. And how are you going to finance it?
Well, I think that is an area where we could do some bonded indebtedness to finance a capital plan.
But how are you going to pay for the bonded indebtedness?
Sure.
The gaming bill was supposed to pay for that. You say no gaming. How do you pay for those bonds?
Well, I think we pay for the bonds by looking at ways to increase our revenues across the board on other...
What other? How are you going to increase revenues? You don't want to increase taxes.
Sure. No, not increase taxes.
So what do you do to increase revenues?
Well, look, as the state starts to grow and we start to turn things around, we'll have more sales tax revenues, we'll have more of those types of dollars coming in from increased business and increased payroll taxes, all of those sorts of things.
So jobs and growth, more people working, more people paying income taxes.
Absolutely.
That way, natural growth.
Natural growth.
Not increasing the rates, increasing tax revenue.
Absolutely.
We're going to continue to speak as the credits roll, but I very much want to thank our guest Tim Stratton, who is running for state rep. He is running in the 58th district. That is a number of areas on the North Shore. He's running against Karen May, the incumbent for the last 8 years. We've invited Karen May here. We hope she'll accept and come and give her point of view. That's what democracy is about. Listen to the Democrat, listen to the Republican, listen to anybody else, see what they think, right?
Absolutely.
Very quickly, cultural issues.
Sure.
Gays, guns, God, abortion, not necessarily in that order. Abortion, you're pro-choice?
Pro-choice.
You support Roe v. Wade?
I do.
But you would like to see parental notice laws?
I would.
With judicial bypass?
I would. With proper judicial bypass, I think that parental notification is something that most moderate families want in Illinois.
You support basic gun control?
I do.
Would you support a ban on assault weapons statewide?
I would.
All right. So, and on same-sex marriage, would you support same-sex marriage?
No, I would not support same-sex marriage.
Civil unions?
I would support civil unions.
And you support the bills that have passed that ban discrimination in housing and employment based on sexual orientation?
Correct.
You support. Is there enough God in the schools, or is there too much God in the public schools?
I think that...
there was this silent moment.
Sure,
Some people, it was kind of overturned by a court. Some people said it's not praying, it's just giving kids a time to reflect.
Sure.
How would you have voted on that silent moment?
Knowing what I know, I would have probably supported it. I think that there are some problems with the legislation of enforcement and how mechanically you make that work, but I don't personally have a problem with taking a silent moment for reflection.
As long as it's not mandated prayer or something.
As long as it's
you wouldn't support that?
No, I would not support publicly mandated
What about a
prayer.
ban on partial birth abortion? Would you support that?
I would support a ban on partial birth abortion.
Need there be an exception for not just the life, but the health of the mother?
There would be an exception for the life or the health of the mother. But
so with those two caveats, you would support that ban. But you're running more on economic issues than cultural issues?
Absolutely. We've got to get the economic situation under control.
Reform, would you say that's a part of it?
Absolutely. We need comprehensive ethics reform.
And on environmental issues, there's a bill for expediting permit process for refineries. You supported that?
I would.
Karen May was one of the few state reps.
She was one of 22 or 23 state reps to oppose that.
What was her problem with it?
Not sure.
You didn't get to talk to her.